Hi again. Back to hear another chapter in Murder in the Kollel. Today we'll do chapter 6. Chapter 6, Kollel. The rabbi, his wife, and 8 kids apparently lived on the second floor and part of the attic of a large house just off Elizabeth Street. At present, he only had 4 kids at the home. The others were often learning in yeshiva, so for now they were not too crowded. The ground floor was the home of the greater Lansing area Kollel. It was basically just a large space with doors leading out to a small kitchen and washroom. This main room was a combination of a synagogue, study hall, and meeting room. The place was just a few blocks from Daphna Lachler's home, but this was to be expected. But the community had to be geographically compact because it was forbidden to use vehicles on the Sabbath, and frum people would have to walk to the synagogue, so distances could not be great. There were 2 pairs of bachrim learning at half the dozen tables in the book-lined study hall. Rabbi Lipsky was on his shirt sleeves up on a ladder on the east wall of the room, trying to repair the rope pull that opened the decorative curtain in front of the Holy Ark. The Ark contained the Torah scroll and was the holiest item in the synagogue. The Jews are called the people of the book. The Torah scroll is the book. The rabbi wore a black skull cap and was about 45 years old. He was of average height and weight and had a wispy salt and pepper beard. I walked into the room, but Daphna stayed at the door. I turned back to her and I asked, "Why don't you come in?" "I can't," she said in frustration. "There are men learning in there. It would be improper." She was absolutely right. I was only 12 hours out of the Beis Medrash and I was already forgetting frum world etiquette. Women did not walk around the Beis Medrash if men were present. Understanding the problem, I said, "Wait here, I'll get Rabbi Lipsky." I walked up to the rabbi and introduced myself and explained the reason for my visit. He immediately came down from the ladder and directed us both towards his domicile on the second floor. As we climbed the stairs, the rabbi said, "I'm glad you came just now. I have no idea how to fix that cord. If I kept up, I was going to totally break the whole geschäft." Once again, I had no idea what the word geschäft meant, but I guess it was what you called a mechanism or something like that. The rabbi went up first and I followed as per etiquette. Daphna came last. As we entered his home, he yelled out, "Chana, look who's here." I assumed Chana was his wife, and after a moment a rotund woman wearing a tichel headscarf came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She took one look at Daphna and smiled. "Daphna, good to see you in the middle of the week." "You know how busy I get," said Daphna in her defense. "Don't I know it," said Chana with a smile. She looked at me and said, "She's an Eishes Chayil." I knew that expression. An Eishes Chayil was a woman of valor. More important, a woman that made a good living so that her yeshiva boy husband could sit and learn. An Eishes Chayil was a commodity very much in demand in the yeshiva world. I turned to Rabbi Lipsky and said in mock seriousness, "Thank you for letting me know that. This is very important information." How interesting. Everyone was trying to make a match for Daphna. I could feel Daphna staring daggers at my back. I suppose happily married couples develop something like telepathy or clairvoyance and are able to understand one another without a word being spoken. I never had anything like that with my ex. We had more like an anti-telepathy. But the Lipskys seemed to have it because the Rebbetzin came over and said, Daphna, why don't you come with me for a moment so we can give the men time to talk?" Somehow Chana knew that her husband wanted to speak to me in private. Even though I had only met Daphna the hour before, I intuitively knew that going with Rebbetzin Lipsky was just about the last thing she wanted to do. Still, it was necessary that I talk with the rabbi, and if she was in the room, it would complicate everything. "Daphna, I think that would be a good idea. I have to get Rabbi Lipsky's approval of my plans, if you know what I mean." I could see Daphna resign herself to the inevitable and left the room with the Rebbetzin. When we were alone, Rabbi Lipsky turned to me and said seriously, "Rabbi Kalmanovich spoke with me. I don't know what surprised me more, that Rabbi Klein took his own life, or that Rabbi Kalmanovich thinks he did not." "I can imagine it must be quite a shock," I said. "I understand from Rabbi Kalmanovich that you are a private investigator." Strange combination, private investigator and yeshiva bacher. "You don't know how strange," I said with a smile. Then I put on my serious face and I asked, So what do you think happened?" "Me? What do I know? If you would have told me that Avram Klein was someone that would take his own life, I would have told you that you're crazy." He said it with determination. Rabbi Klein was the one who could talk just about anyone out of committing suicide. I know because he counseled disturbed students from the university. It was hard to imagine a typical college student feeling comfortable in the Kollel. Did he talk with them here? No, definitely not here, said the rabbi. I assume it was somewhere on the campus or the little house, but I don't know where. So you think it was not suicide? Who knows what is in another man's heart? Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, said the rabbi, nodding his head. About 5 weeks ago, out of the blue, Rabbi Klein told me that for personal reasons, he would have to leave his position as head of the Kollel. When I tried to pin him down, he refused to tell me his reasons. He did say that it would probably be for at least 1.5 years, maybe more. He liked his work here in the Kollel, but he would understand if I could not keep his job open for him. Was he upset when he said this, I asked. No, said the rabbi, recalling the conversations. He was as cool as a cucumber. I started to ask the stock questions when you're investigating his death. Well, did he have any enemies? Were there any financial or business difficulties? Did any of the students here that he counseled suffer from psychiatric problems? Did he suffer from any psychiatric or physical problems? The police here in Lansing asked me all those questions. I understand why you have to ask them. But the answer is no to all of them. We all loved Avram Klein, and I'm sure he knew it. I can't think of a soul who would want to hurt him, said the rabbi, lapsing into silence. After a moment, he said, in answer to your first question, no, I don't think Avram Klein committed suicide. But I don't know who killed him or how they could have done it. From his statement, I understood that he had some knowledge of the circumstances and facts of the case. He therefore must know that the evidence indicated that Rabbi Klein had been alone in his house when he died and that there were no signs of foul play. The question was, how did he know? The police shared the information with me because they were giving me cooperation up the wazoo. But why should the local rabbi have that information? Simplest way to find out is to ask. How do you know how he died? From Rebbetzin Klein, he said simply. The police reported to her about what they found, and she told me, is there something wrong? Nothing really wrong with that. Good police-community relations. Still, it was a bit early to allow public access to all the information. No problem, I said with a smile. Just wanted to know. Just think. Finding your husband hanging in the basement. I can't imagine what it must have been like for Devorah, said the rabbi, shaking his head. Did the rabbi get along with his wife, Devorah? They were like lovebirds. I mean, kosher lovebirds, of course, he said emphatically. She took care of everything that was related to the house. Their home was always like a show place. And her meals, she could cook like a dream. Don't tell Hannah I said that. Everywhere they went together. Like I said, kosher lovebirds. It was a shame they could never have children. Did Rebbetzin Klein have a physical problem that prevented her from having children? I have no idea. Maybe my wife knows something, but as you can imagine, it was not a subject for open discussion. I have to clarify a point that bothered me from the outset. You said they always went everywhere together. So how is it that Rebbetzin Klein went to the movies all on her own every Wednesday evening? From what I know about the film community, most Rebbetzins would not go to see films at all. You're right, said the rabbi with a nod. Except this was Devorah's one weakness. She loved films. Always had. Rabbi Avram told her that he would never go to a movie theater, and he also told her that he felt that it was not appropriate for her as well. But Devorah was a very determined woman. They finally came to an agreement that she would go alone to the last show at the theater so that very few people would see her. There are all sorts of determined women in this world, and it was crucial in this case to know what kind of determined woman Rebbetzin Klein was. Let me see if I got this straight. He said no, she said yes, and the agreement reached was yes. Nice compromise. Is she that kind of determined woman? From the look on the rabbi's face, I could see that he understood my question, and he said, you got it exactly. She is a determined woman. And if she doesn't get her way, what happens, I asked? Then she becomes an even more determined woman, he said with a knowing nod. I see, I said. Good to be warned about problematic personalities. I have another small difficulty that needs your assistance. Whatever it is, you got it. I need Daphne Lachler's help to check the computer disk from the Klein home, but she's blackmailing me. Unless I get her help on this case, I won't let her help me on this case. She won't get me the information on the disks. Is that allowed, he asked? You mean blackmailing me? No, for someone like her to work on the investigation. Yes and no. I mean, yes, but it's complicated. But that's not the problem, I said dismissingly. The difficulty is that she knows the people involved. Will this be a problem? Will it cloud her judgment? Will it interfere with the investigation? What does this have to do with me? Said the rabbi. Well, I want your approval to allow her to work with me, I said simply. Well, now you've put me in a difficult situation, said the rabbi. How so? Do you know how this kollel works? Asked the rabbi. Typical Jewish answer. Answer a question with a question. Well, I suppose it's a Jewish study hall. Absolutely right, but it's much more, said the Rabbi Lipsky. 7 years ago, I was approached by a dozen Jews living here in the greater Lansing area. They told me that although there was an active Hillel house just off campus, it was geared for the students and not families. There are conservative and reform temples here, but the nearest regular Orthodox synagogue is over 50 miles away. They wanted a real house of prayer, a place to bring their children up and to gain insight into Jewish values. They purchased this house and offered to pay a rabbi's salary for 5 years. I explained to them that without a daily minyan it would be impossible to have an Orthodox synagogue. Why would that prevent you from opening a synagogue? I asked. Well, if there was no daily minyan, it would just be an empty building with no impact on the community, said the rabbi. I see. So since they could not guarantee that 10 local Jews would be available 3 times a day, we came up with the idea of the Kollel. This serves 2 purposes. First, with 6 Kollel students, the Kollel rabbi and me, we had 8. We figured that we'd be able to recruit 2 more Jews to fulfill the required number on a voluntary, rotational basis. The Bachram are officially here from 7 in the morning to 10 at night, every day except Shabbos. That's the European pronunciation of Shabbat. Besides their self-learning, these Bachram get lessons from the Kollel rabbi and some guest rabbis from the Detroit yeshivas. On top of all that, I also run an outreach program, and I require that each one of the Bachram teach Torah to anyone that wants to learn. So they all give classes to groups and individuals here and at their homes. What does this have to do with Dafna? I'm getting to that, said Rabbi Lipsky. As with many synagogues, our biggest problem is money. The more successful we are, meaning when more people come to our services and the Shabbos meals, we go deeper into the hole. The people that started this place have been extremely generous, but for the day-and-day running of the shul, we have to rely on donations. The problem is that most of our customers for the services and the meals are from the transient student population, and for the most part, they haven't got a dime. The Kollel students are also married and require salaries so that their families have a roof over their heads and food on the table. The money collected from the teaching is not enough. The rabbi stopped speaking and looked at me directly. I realized that he wanted me to reach a logical conclusion from what he had said so far. What does this have to do with Dafna? Then I got it. And that's where Dafna fits in. Bingo, said the rabbi, pointing his index finger at me. Dafna is a good business. I don't really know what it is, but you already said it's something to do with computer disks. She is one of the many from people that give a tithe, 10% of their yearly profits to charity. She has a really good business. And she is one of your benefactors, I said with a knowing nod. Bingo again, said the rabbi. And you can't say anything against her because she might stop donating to the Kollel, I said, stating the logical assumption. Now don't get me wrong, said the rabbi, shaking his palms in front of my face. I cannot believe that if for some reason I said that you should not work with Dafna, that she would stop donations. Actually, the opposite is probably true. Dafna is a real neshama, someone with a soul. She knows everyone and everyone knows her, and you won't find a single person who will say one bad word about her. Her husband, David, Oliver Shalom, may his soul find peace, was one of the first Bachram in the Kollel. He never took a salary, not a penny. She supported him and raised their 2 daughters and kept a beautiful home and gave donations to the Kollel. She was also as smart as a whip and a fountain of knowledge in Torah and secular subjects. I think she could rival our best Bachar if she set her mind to it. So, as far as her working with me, do you approve or don't you approve? I asked. Oh, I approve. Definitely approve, said the rabbi with a smile. End of chapter 6. Come back tomorrow, we'll read chapter 7. Pinball Pete. Bye.